Hey everybody, it's your boy John. It's been a slow week for videos. I'm sorry about that. I just have not had much time. As you might have seen on the streams, I got Adobe Illustrator and have been teaching myself how to letter my own comics to try to save on some costs for that. And if you're interested in that, make sure to go subscribe to my Patreon because I'm going to be giving everybody short comics, like kind of in the vein of those old Steve Ditko shorts that I've been going on about for a while now. In addition to my comics that I sell regularly. All right. But today we're going to be talking about the Silver Surfer. And this is the epic collection that first came out of the Silver Surfer. Well, maybe the Volume 1 did. But I'll tell you a little about the Silver Surfer history. This is Volume 3 from 1980 to 1990. And Volume 1 actually is just a compilation of Silver Surfer stories from the Fantastic Four. So I purposefully skipped that, and I'm going to read that in the Fantastic Four volumes. Once I get to that, it starts around Volume 3 of the Fantastic Four, and I just read Volume 1, so we'll get there pretty shortly. Volume 2 is not out. Volume 2 comprises of a series that was done in the 1960s. I think it lasted 18 issues. It will, I don't know when they're going to put it out, but they're re-releasing the omnibus of that series in a hardcover form, which will comprise Volume 2 probably sometime early next year. So I'll be reading that at that point. Now this starts a new series. I guess the Silver Surfer had its series in the 60s that didn't last very long, and they didn't really revive it until the 80s. And the first series, the beginning of it rather, is a one-shot. Well, I guess it's not. I guess it's from Epic Illustrated, which I don't know what that is, from spring 1980, and it had a little bit with the Surfer. I love the art in this piece. This is some of the best art I've ever read in comics right here. And it's Silver Surfer and Galactus story, very short, but also very good. So all the way around, just completely solid. Okay, then we get into a one-shot from, I believe, 1982, where it's kind of a big history of the Silver Surfer going off about his own home planet and the woman that he loves and trying to find her, but he's being kept from her, both for a couple of reasons, because Galactus has trapped him on Earth, and on the other hand, because Mephisto is like kind of hiding his woman out and making it so Silver Surfer's miserable. So there's that, and it's a very interesting story, very enjoyable. I thought perhaps this was a like compilation story of some history stuff, because there's a lot of backstory to this. And I thought it might have been just sort of a retelling of several different issues. I don't know if that's the case because I haven't gone back to that Fantastic Four or the original Silver Surfer run. If it is or if it isn't, let me know in the comments because I only have this to go on. But Stan Lee scripted this and John Byrne drew it, so it is frankly just a masterpiece of a one-shot where you go through just beautiful, beautiful work all the way around, and you learn all about the Silver Surfer's past. You learn about his being trapped on the planet. It's just like, it is epic. This is Stan Lee at his finest and John Byrne at his finest from what I've seen. Look at that beautiful perspective and shadowing. There's good stuff right there. And then more perspective as Galactus, you can see, this is an amazing artist because you can see how big Galactus is without any context around him, just because you're kind of looking up at him. It's pretty great. So Mephisto's done wonderfully. It's just a great story all the way around. And that ends there. Put in a little one-shot, and we get into the Silver Surfer series from 1987. So they did that one-shot, which just kind of went over the Silver Surfer, and this is another reset in 87. Steve Englehart is the guy who wrote this entire volume from this point forward. And the artist is, I think, Marshall Rogers. Yeah, Marshall Rogers. Now, Marshall Rogers has a very interesting and distinct style through this, and it actually, because of that, it gives the book its own feel that feels different than a lot of other Marvel stuff. He colored his own work too, with very vibrant colors, and I really like that. I don't like the dark, sort of oversaturated so much. I really like these colors that pop, and you'll get to see this pretty quickly. So it basically just goes back to Silver Surfer hanging out. He's free because he's free of the barrier that Galactus put around Earth. And unfortunately, he comes back to Earth, and he has to deal with the Champion. Now, there's like 6 former, I guess 6 people who like have had their own species and they're eternal, and the champion's one of them, the gardener's another one of them, the collector's another one of them, and Silver Surfer goes through this where they got a plot to kill Galactus, and Silver Surfer, they know that Silver Surfer will have a problem with that, and so they have to fight him, and of course he does. Now here's some of the colors I'm talking about. It's just like super vibrant and really different than a lot of other comics, and that's why I like it a lot. It's great. It reminds me. I was saying it reminds me of Mike Allred a lot, but obviously Mike Allred, took this style as a huge influence, which is good stuff. Marshall Rogers did a great job all the way around. Very fun. The first issue, he fights that guy, and then into, I believe, are we in issue 2 yet? I don't know. There's the original Nova, who's Galactus's herald there, and that's Silver Surfer's kind of first major encounter with her, and that builds over the course of the book a little bit. She fades out and goes back to Galactus while Silver Surfer does his thing. He goes back to his homeland to go see Shala Ball. This is a really emotional issue, really well done. There's another subplot that builds through this entire series, which is the Kree and Skrulls are at war galactically with each other. Really not a traditional superhero book, as you get a lot more going on with that sort of like galactic conflict and in the background, and it's super fun. And in that issue, his former lover has become the Empress and says, "I can't take a lover, right?" I have no idea why she can't, but she says she can't, and so Silver Surfer just goes away and has the sads and says, "Screw it, I'm just gonna float around the galaxy." And then he goes back to it kind of transitions right back into this story where he's fighting these eternal beings and dealing with that and dealing with here's a fight he had, and he's kind of left for dead, and Mantis shows up, and Mantis is a very interesting character. I've probably not read much Mantis, but she's like a weird cosmic character who she can reform her soul in plants across the galaxy, and she can actually travel across the galaxy by sort of infusing her soul into plants and then hatching herself. It's a very bizarre concept, which I love, and I would like to read a lot more of this character. So she takes the Silver Surfer under her wing, and kind of they have this weird relationship with each other as it goes on, and we get back into the Kree Skrull stuff. I mean, this really builds so nicely into a single epic. Epic, get it? And overall, this story is just beautiful, and I'm not talking about all the art all the way through, but like you see just the coloration that Marshall Rogers did. Here's Mantis and the Silver Surfer, building their dynamic relationship, and then we have some fights. So Silver Surfer goes back to fighting. Boom, boom, boom. Mantis helps. Boom, boom, boom. And we get back into the Kree Skrull War. That's so hard to say. And this just continues over the issues where Mantis and the Silver Surfer are fighting these Eternals, and they're trying to take down Galactus. Look at the colors. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. And the Krees and Skrulls are doing their thing. It's escalating. Silver Surfer, kind of gets in on their deal. Turns out Ego, the living planet's involved in it, and there's some problems there. Rawr. This one is interesting, as I recall. It's a little different, and they're investigating more into this Kree Skrull stuff. It all kind of ties in together. It's good stuff. Look at that. Look at all this weird stuff. I love it. Love it. There's the gardener. So he's fighting the plants and stuff like that. So it goes through, same deal. The plot line just continues on. Each issue is really solid. There's some of them so I guess the drawback here is Englehart actually goes into periods where there's exposition, and he really just lays out the background of the war, and the background of the Eternals, and the background of Galactus, and the background of the Surfer, and all that. This is such a beautiful drawing. And then Galactus finds out about the plot at this point, which we're now about 10 issues into it. So the exposition gets bogs it down a little bit is the only thing I'd complain about in the series so far, and it happens, and it slows down some issues, and you can kind of skim over that stuff, and it really doesn't detract from it too much, but it does slow down the pace, where maybe he could have compressed this a couple more issues, and it might have been a little more solid on that front. And you see he kind of overwhelms with dialogue from time to time, but then it backs off, so it works out. Love this little tale with Galactus here, and Galactus hangs with Eternity. Very cool looking stuff. Look at this, just so cool. Beautiful stuff. Now we're in a weird period with the Fantastic Four where the Thing has some weird bumps. I've seen this in a couple Epic collections that I've been reading lately, and I guess Black Panther's part of the Fantastic Four. I don't even know what's going on there, but you have to kind of follow along with the whole Marvel line. Some people are reading these epics and kind of grabbing them and then just reading them all together, like all the 1967 ones and then the 1968, and going through that way rather than just going through the individual lines. I am kind of being haphazard about it, and it's mainly because I think it'd be more interesting for reviews to just have random ones like the Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four, but I'm also working my way through some lines like Thor, and probably Fantastic Four also. Sorry about that. I can't help my ringing, unfortunately. And we have to deal with death. So part of the deal with the Eternals is that they had some deal with death where they can't actually die, and that's why they were going to fight Galactus, and Galactus decides to eat them. It's pretty fun stuff. And so we get into Surfer hanging with Nova. Oh, the Mantis has died at this point, and still the Surfer's all upset about that, because now he's lost Shala and he's lost the Mantis, and now he's hanging with Nova. Nova takes a liking to him. They have some space pirates they fight. Gets pretty interesting fighting the space pirates who are, a weird dinosaur dude. And look at the art. It's just so great. I love it so much. And it continues on. So the space pirate thing, then it gets really deeper into this pre-Skrull War because the Galactus thing is kind of resolved. And this is really interesting. And Nova and Surfer are kind of investigating this stuff. They're trying to track down the last Eternal is what it comes down to. And the Surfer ends up fighting the Surfer. This is a very 80s deal right here. It's so great. Spoiler: it's a Skrull pretending to be the Surfer, and ends up fighting with Nova. Helps out, keeps going. Now at some point, Marshall Rogers actually stops doing the art. Oops, I believe. Oops, skipped over. We're already to number 15, and I think he's already stopped in here. You can tell the colors are not as vibrant or as quite as interesting on this issue as the ones before. It tones down into a kind of more standard comic, and that's fine. It's just, I really liked that art while it lasted. But Steve Englehart is keeping the same story going, and there's definitely a big thing going on with the Skrulls, and one of the Skrulls ends up on Earth, and then that pretty much kind of ends the volume, and the rest is tertiary material, and I'll get into that in a second. It's not bad tertiary material. I actually really liked it almost better than the volume itself. But yes, weird stopping point. I'm sad about it. I wish there was a volume 4 and 5, but there's not. Might want to wait for a volume 4 and 5 so you can just plow through Steve Englehart's entire run. And then that gets into Jim Starlin's once it'll get into the 5. Now 6 and 7 are out, and those are basically the Infinity Gauntlet and Thanos quest. So you get the background on that event. And Jim Starlin does excellent work also on the Surfer. So I've read all those, but I've not read a Silver Surfer volume that I haven't liked yet, which is interesting. Now the end of this is a Galactus: The Origin, and it's very cool, very neat deal. And I guess it was reprinted from Thor 169, and they added new material to it to make it a little bigger. Which I didn't know there was a Galactus origin in Thor 169, but pretty neat. And it's all done by Lee and Jack Kirby, so it's totally worth reading. Maybe you could read it in Thor and it'll be just as good, who knows. But very enjoyable stuff. Jack Kirby's art is unparalleled, and you see just the weirdness and the dynamicness is escalated to level 11 versus the stuff before. Even though, look at the expressiveness of Galactus. I love it. He does such a great job. And then there's one more issue, and this one's very, very weird thing. So Marvel Fanfare, I don't know anything about this mag. I guess it's a random comics that they just kind of put back and forth, and you see Silver Surfer and Mantis, but you go, wait a minute, didn't Mantis die earlier in the Surfer? What's going on here? And there's a big editorial beginning, and I love that they explain it in comic form because that makes it pretty neat. But I guess John Buscema drew Silver Surfer tale, and John Buscema is one of the great artists from Marvel back in the day, and Steve Englehart wrote it, and it was kind of like a precursor to. It was going to be a part of this Silver Surfer volume, then I don't know what happened with Buscema. I guess he went off the volume or whatever, and so it ended up being an alternate universe tale. If the Silver Surfer had been trapped on Earth and then settled down with the Mantis, basically on Earth, and fought Mephisto on Earth, just beautiful stuff. John Buscema does a great job too. Much more standard comic fare than Marshall Rogers or Jack Kirby, but he draws women very well, and it works very great, very clean. It's very clean compared to the other ones, I guess. We got Mangog in here who fights the Surfer, and it's just a Elseworlds What If tale. It's pretty long and pretty solid, and the Surfer ends up like basically adopting a kid. It's an interesting way to end the volume. But it's nice they put that tertiary content in there to kind of round it out, give you a little extra stuff. Overall, I thought this volume was fun. I'd say it's probably 7.5, 8 out of 10, just because of those expositional points of Steve Englehart's scripts just kind of slow down things a little too much, maybe. And then the art once it drops off and changes to a different artist is not as interesting or compelling as it was before. I think it peaked kind of with that Galactus storyline, and the Kree Skull thing's pretty interesting, but I'm not as invested with it as I was with the Galactus storyline. Looking forward to the next volume. Totally worth reading, and I hope you enjoyed this review. Next up is going to be Hulk Volume 4, which just came out. So thank you very much, guys. Like, subscribe, and then go check out the Patreon. So if you like my thoughts on comics, you'll probably like my comics. Hope you'll check them out. See ya.